Welcome to Tab Briefs, a weekly look at headlines from the world of faith for June 26, 2020. I'm Tab Media Content Editor Carrie McWhorter, and here are some of the headlines that grabbed our attention this week. First up, federal officials in Texas have shut down a global prostitution and sex trafficking website. CityXGuide.com has been seized by the U.S. Secret Service working with the Northern District of Texas U.S. Attorney's Office. The site's owner, Wilhan Martono, has been charged on 28 counts, including charges related to promoting and facilitating prostitution and money laundering. Martono was arrested on June 17th in California. After his arrest, the CityX Guide homepage was replaced with a page notifying users the website had been seized by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. CityX Guide was a leading source of online ads for prostitution and sex trafficking. Users described the site as taking over from where Backpage left off. Backpage was a classified advertising website that had become the largest marketplace for prostitution by the time federal law enforcement agencies seized it in April 2018. Martono was charged in part under the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, or FOSTA, a law passed in April 2018 that allows the federal government to prosecute websites that facilitate sex trafficking. According to the indictment, Martono allegedly netted more than $21 million off CityX Guide and related sites. He allegedly registered the domain names for several of the sites just one day after the FBI shut down Backpage. CityX Guide allegedly allowed brothels, pimps, and prostitutes to post hundreds of thousands of ads for sexual services, despite terms of use purportedly forbidding such ads. Ryan Spradlin, special agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations' Dallas field office, said the case is a harsh reminder of the ruthlessness of human traffickers and lengths to which they go, including victimizing women and children, to make a profit. Law enforcement has identified numerous minor victims in CityX Guide ads, including a 13-year-old Jane Doe recovered in North Texas in November 2019. If convicted, Martono faces up to 25 years in federal prison. Next up, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall and Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry led an 11-state Attorneys General letter to congressional leadership in support of the nation's law enforcement personnel. The June 22nd letter called on Congress to temper anti-police rhetoric and its potential for harm. The letter asked congressional leaders to help restore the country's faith in law enforcement officers who perform their jobs honorably and bring stability to our cities and states, the attorneys generals wrote. The letter noted the death of George Floyd, but disputed claims that there are systemic problems in the law enforcement system. According to the attorneys general, data simply does not support claims that law enforcement is systemically racist or structurally biased. The letter stated it is possible to both speak out against racism and support law enforcement, and said support for calls to defund the police are inciting chaos. See today's show notes for more about the letter and a link to the full text. And finally, a new survey finds most Americans aren't yet comfortable going back to church. Among American faith communities, white evangelicals are the only major religious group who by and large say they are comfortable returning to in-person worship gatherings. That's the finding of a new study by the American Enterprise Institute examining the response of Americans to COVID-19. The survey found that overall, a majority of Americans say they are not comfortable returning to in-person religious gatherings. The survey of some 3,500 Americans conducted in late May and early June showed that 64% of Americans said they were somewhat uncomfortable or very uncomfortable attending in-person worship. Among those who reported their congregations offered in-person worship in the past week, 56% of respondents said they chose not to go. Lead researcher Daniel Cox said lay people are expressing a significant amount of discomfort in going back to formal religious practices. 61% of white evangelical respondents said they were very comfortable or somewhat comfortable with in-person worship at their churches. Among that group, however, men were far more comfortable than women with 71% of white evangelical men saying they would be at least somewhat comfortable attending in-person worship services, compared with 51% of white evangelical women who said the same. By comparison, about 1/3 of those from other Protestant religious traditions said they felt at least somewhat comfortable attending in-person worship services. Some 54% of Americans overall said they don't expect life in the United States to return to normal until 2021. They expressed hesitation not only with worship services, but said they would be equally uncomfortable attending sporting events, eating out at a restaurant, or going to a movie theater. Only 45% said they would feel comfortable going to their polling place to vote. You can read more about this latest survey at the link in today's show notes. Those are your tab briefs for June 26, 2020. To read more about these and other stories from the world of faith-based news, go to tabonline.org. Or if you prefer more video content, check out Tab Media on IGTV and YouTube. The links to both are posted in today's show notes. Thanks for watching Tab Briefs today. Be sure to join us again next Friday.